Welcome to episode 93 of the Lone Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts from yesterday's matchup between Chicago and Utah, mostly on the Utah side, given that they won 5-2 in their home opener. It was a really great game from Utah, and they stood out all around because they have a new decor this year. They have a lot of new players this year. They have a good crop of younger players mixed in with their veteran players. They have a lot of players who are now extended. So, in terms of the new ownership and new staff, sort of, and the new group of players that they have, and how they've made some of their moves throughout the summer, this has allowed for a lot more growth within the team. Dylan Guenther's extended to a big deal, and then you have guys like Clayton Keller still around. Logan Cooley's looking to make a next step. You have Josh Stone who's looking to make his mark in the league. You have other players who are looking to continue to get better over time, and they had a lot of really good standouts. I noticed a lot of their decor and their activation offensively from their Ds, and you're going to want to see guys like Sean Jersey take a next step in their careers, and you're going to want to see Mikhail Sergachev be a number one defenseman for them. And John Marino, when he's healthy, you want to see him be consistent. But one of the Ds that actually really stood out yesterday was Michael Kesselring on the back end, a guy who was traded to Arizona at the time in the Nick Bukestad deal. And Kesselring's been a guy who has really stood out. And yesterday stood out more for his offensive play and his rush play and his activation from the back end. He's notably more of a shutdown defenseman and plays more of a shutdown game. He's not necessarily super offensively oriented, but he can play offensively oriented when he needs to and rush oriented when he needs to. So he stood out in that sense yesterday. He was activating the weak side. He was activating and sprinting the play, sprinting the dot lane, and a threat anytime he was on the ice, ironically enough, in terms of his puck movement and how he could manage the play and manage the puck. He was very effective all around in terms of his neutral zone play and his ozone play. Another really good standout and most recently extended was Dylan Guenther. Absolutely cerebral shooter in terms of his ability to shoot the puck with velocity and pure power. You could argue it's one of the better shots among younger players in the league because of the ability to for it to come off his stick so quickly and so instantaneously. It's very rare to see that among players. And with Gunther, he's a guy that has that slingshot style release where he can shoot near his hip, he can shoot from range in terms of where the puck is positioned on his stick or near his body, and he can still find a way to sling it off his stick, almost like a lever. And I mentioned this multiple times on multiple episodes prior, how you have that lever-like ability where if you can shoot the puck closer to your hip and closer off your hip, then you can get more natural velocity out of it. So it's a Connor Bedard mechanism per se, and Macklin Celebrini has it. A lot of the younger players seem to have more mechanical based elements that are slightly untraditional and slightly nuanced in the sense of you wouldn't necessarily see that back then, but now you've seen it a lot more with some of the younger guys. So with Gunther, he's a guy that can shoot almost directly off his hip, and it has that snap-like effect. So when you shoot off your hip, it has that snap-like effect in the middle area of your stick and the middle area of your blade. So when you're shooting with your bottom hand, it creates a retraction ability, and it allows the puck to come off your stick a little bit faster and surprise goalies because usually they're expecting a wind up on a shot, but when you have something like that where you can shoot so close to your body and so instantaneously, it surprises goalies and they're not able to get set up as easily. So it throws a little bit of a change up at them. So with Gunther, that's what stands out in terms of shooting mechanics. And then you look at his playmaking ability, you look at even his two-way play. He's not a bad two-way player, and he's going to develop defensively over time. But his offense is mainly based on his goal scoring. I wouldn't be surprised to see him score upwards of 40 goals within the next 2 years because of his ability to shoot with power, shoot with volume, but also shoot from dangerous areas of the offensive zone. Logan Cooley was another standout. Logan Cooley really good in his routes yesterday and his timing and his off puck play. And that's a really innate ability to have that. And Cooley's a standout player when it comes to that because he understands sequences proactively, and he does this really well without the puck. So this allows him to get into space and find spaces that other players can't so easily. So in terms of his playmaking, yes, we know he's a really good playmaker and a really talented playmaker. And that's what he's known for. He's not a shooter. He's quite the opposite of Gunther. His standout abilities is passing and the flair within his passing, how he can use manipulation, deception within his feet and his hands, how he can lure guys in, how he can manage space with the puck to be able to draw a guy in and then kick a puck out wide or find space in the neutral zone on a kick out play or make an east-west seam pass that other players don't have the ability to do under pressure. He stands out in that sense. He doesn't stand out as much in terms of shooting ability. He's more of an in tight and rebound shot generator type guy. He's not going to rely on his shot a ton for pure volume. He's going to pass when he has the opportunity. His two-way play stood out, but I liked his offensive buildup and his routes inside the neutral zone and in the O zone. Like I said, proactive player. He understands that sense and that timing element when it comes to building up his routes in those sequences. And at the same time, Cooley is very effective when it comes to being able to manage ice in those situations. So he is a player who you can play on the offensive side of the puck, but also defensively as well, and plays a lot of different situations. Mikhail Sergachev, another player that really stood out, and him and Sean Jersey were paired together. That pair together was really dynamic. And it's really interesting because they're both offensively inclined defensemen. Like you could argue they're both offensive defensemen, but they're both really sound defensively as well, which is really interesting because they both play and have similar styles in a sense. Jersey is not quite as elite as this Chergachev is yet, but Chergachev's right up there in terms of being a top pairing defenseman and elite number one defenseman. So he's a guy you can manage defensively. He's a guy you can manage offensively. He's a guy you can use on your first power play unit, like they did yesterday. He's been on their first power play unit for all of training camp, and that's the unique thing. You can have, if you wanted to, you can have Sugarshev and Dursey on the first power play unit together. You don't necessarily need to because they have a lot of high octane forwards that they can replace having two defensemen on that first unit with. So you can roll with one defenseman being Sergachev and then four forwards, four high octane forwards. Like they had Josh Doan on the first unit yesterday. They had, I believe it was Cooley, I believe it was Gunther, Keller, of course. I don't remember if that was the full makeup of it for the entirety of the game, but that was at least the majority of it. And so when they had the second unit come out, you had Sean Dursey on the second unit, which for most teams, you could have Sean Dursey as your first unit power play quarterback. So that's really impressive. And that pairing stood out all game. I thought defensively they were fine. And they're shutting plays down using angles and details and stick positioning more than physicality. They're not a physical pairing. They're more of a timing and rhythm type pairing where they like to incorporate those angles, shutting plays down, skating forwards, and trying to maintain gaps using that leverage. So with that pairing, you have a really standout pairing. And then once John Marino comes back, you're going to have some balance defensively, and you're going to have more depth to the defensive core than you do already. Mikhail Sergachev is obviously going to be a big addition throughout the season, and he's going to be a very big contributor, and he's going to be relied upon as such. So he's a guy that really stood out in all facets of the game. Clayton Keller is elite playmaker, elite shooter, dual threat ability, and he's a guy, obviously the captain now of the team, but at the same time, he's a guy that stands out in terms of pure offense and how he can drive offense, drive pace. An elite playmaker who finds seams so effortlessly, finds passing lanes so effortlessly. It's so easy for him to find these seams, find these lanes, and see how they're developing and see how the play is developing. So Keller was elite in all facets of the game. He's a guy that stands out all the time, and you notice him all the time. And regardless of where he's going to be on the ice, he's going to try and find you, and he's going to try and find a viable playmaking option. So he's really talented and a guy that stands out in every single facet of the game.